The Wallowa-Whitman runs about 2.5 million acres up into the Blue Mountains and the Wallowas, and most of it is country that makes you feel small in a way that's not unpleasant. Elk country, deer country. In the fall, you can smell the pine sap and the cold coming off the ridgeline from my front porch, and for about 3 weeks every year, I remember why I never left. I've never left. 34 years in Halfway, Oregon, and I know that says something about me that I'm not entirely sure how to explain. Population somewhere under 300 depending on the year and who's given up and moved to Baker City. The nearest Walmart is Baker City, an hour east on Route 86, which means if you forget something on a Tuesday evening, you either do without it or you make a thing out of it. People here mostly do without. That habit runs deep. I work the post office on Main Street. Have for 20 years, since I was 14 and old enough to be useful and my mother knew the postmaster. Started sweeping up and sorting bulk mail on Saturdays, and somewhere along the way it just became the job. 5 days a week under fluorescent lights that have needed replacing since roughly 2012. I know every family in town by their return addresses. The Duncans, the Everetts, the Murrays, the Roses. I know who orders seeds by mail in February and who gets the medication reminders from the VA and who is still, inexplicably, receiving a catalog from a company that sells decorative gourds. I know whose kids have moved away and forgotten to update their address because the mail still comes back. It's a strange kind of intimacy, sorting mail. You don't know people's business exactly, but you know the shape of it. You know who's in trouble and who's doing fine, and you know it before they say a word to you at the counter. I like the work. I always have. There's something about a job that has a clear start and a clear finish that I find useful. The mail comes in. You sort it. It goes out. Whatever else is happening in the world, that part stays the same. The post office keeps hours that suit no one but the postmaster, which has been Donna Marsh for about 15 years now. She opens at 9 and closes at 3. And if you show up at 3:01, she will look at you through the glass with an expression that makes it clear she considers this a personal failure on your part. Most people in Halfway have adjusted. Newcomers find out the hard way. There aren't many newcomers. Halfway is not a sad place. When I try to describe it to people from somewhere else, not that I do this often, they get a look on their face like they're calculating how fast they'd leave. But it's not like that. The mountains are real. The quiet is real. The way the light hits the valley in October is something I haven't found a word for, and I've had 34 years to look for one. People here are the way people get when they've lived close together in a small place for a long time. They know each other's business, and they mostly leave each other alone about it. They show up when something's wrong. They bring food. They don't ask too many questions. Every house in Halfway has extra latches on the windows. Not fancy ones, just the sliding bar type you'd pick up at a hardware store. 30 seconds to install, maybe $4. Every house. The doors have deadbolts that cost more than the doors themselves, which is saying something because the doors in this town are not cheap. People here replace their exterior doors every 15 years or so, whether they need it or not, and they put the good locks on them every time. You grow up here and you don't ask about that. It's like asking why the school runs fire drills. It's just the shape of things. What I noticed as a kid was that this thing, whatever it was, had no name. In a town where every dog gets a name and every broken down truck parked on someone's property gets a name, and the weird rock formation up on the South Ridge has had a name for as long as anyone can remember, this had none. People referred to it as the time. You'd hear it in the way adults talked around it, the way you hear an absence where a word should be. Before the time. Well, after the time. Make sure you're in before the time. My mother said it so often and so casually that I was probably 8 or 9 before I understood she wasn't talking about bedtime in the ordinary sense. At 2:17 in the morning every night, something comes out of the Wallowa-Whitman. Same time, same 12 minutes, 2:17 to 2:29, and then it's done. And at 2:30 the town exhales and goes back to whatever it was doing before it stopped. I don't know what it is. I have 34 years of proximity to it, and I still don't have a word that fits. I know what it does, which is a different kind of knowing, and I know what happens to people who aren't inside when it comes. I'll get to that. But the thing itself, what it is, where it comes from, why halfway specifically, I can't tell you. Nobody in this town can, or if they can, they haven't told me, and I've been paying attention. What I can tell you is that at 2:17 every night, this town seals itself shut. The deadbolts go. The window latches drop. People who are out, and almost nobody is out. But sometimes someone is, a late shift, a long drive back from Baker City. They get inside wherever they can, and they wait. 12 minutes. And then at 2:29 it's over, and ordinary life picks up exactly where it left off, like a tape someone pressed pause on, and then forgot they'd done it. I've lived inside that rhythm my whole life. It's as natural to me as the mail coming in at 7:45 and Donna locking up at 3. It's just the shape of things. The Roses lived at the edge of town, which meant their backyard ended where the trees started. 3 generations in the same house. Tom's grandfather had built it, or most of it anyway, and you could tell by the way the additions didn't quite match. The back section sitting a few inches lower than the front. The window frames in different styles. I'd been in that house so many times I knew which floorboards to step around. This was a Friday in October. I was 12. Tom had gotten a new game, something with motorcycles, and we were in the basement on the pull-out couch with the volume low because his parents were already asleep. The plan was to stay up until midnight, which was the kind of plan you make at 12 when midnight still sounds like an achievement. We made it past midnight, past 1. I don't remember exactly when we fell asleep. The controller was still in my hand when I woke up, the TV showing the game's title screen cycling on a loop, that quiet attract mode that old games do when you've left them too long. Tom was out, completely out, face down in the pillow, one arm hanging off the edge of the couch. The basement was cold, the way old basements get cold in October. Not damp, but just deeply, evenly cold, the kind that settles into the floor and stays. I needed water. That's it. I needed water, so I went upstairs. Brittany, Tom's older sister, 4 years older than us, which at 12 felt like a different generation entirely, worked early shifts at the Shell station on Main Street. 4 or 5 in the morning, which meant she'd sometimes come home in the middle of the night to sleep a few hours before going in. She came and went at odd hours. She used the back door because it was closer to where she parked. I didn't think about any of that when I went upstairs. The kitchen was dark, except for the light above the stove. Tom's mother kept a clean kitchen, no dishes in the sink, nothing on the counters except the coffee maker and a ceramic rooster that had been there since before I could remember. The back door was standing open, not cracked. Standing open, maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet, enough that the cold was already in the room. The curtain panel on the inside was moving slightly. My first thought was that Tom's dad had let the dog out, except the Roses didn't have a dog anymore. Their dog had died the previous spring. I looked at the clock on the microwave. 2:19. I knew what that meant. I'd known what that meant since before I could name it. 2:17 to 2:29. My mother had said it so many times it was in my body before it was in my head. You're inside, you stay inside, you wait. I crossed the kitchen. I got to the door, and instead of just pulling it closed, I stopped. There was something at the tree line. The Rose backyard was maybe 40 feet deep, just grass and an old metal swing set Tom and Brittany had outgrown. And then the trees started. Douglas fir, mostly, with some pine in there, dense enough that at night you couldn't see more than a few feet into them. That night, there was a half moon, so the yard had some light to it, just enough to see the swing set and the fence post at the corner and the edge of the tree line. Something was in the trees. I can't tell you what it looked like because I don't have the right words for it even now. It wasn't an animal. I've seen deer in that yard. I've seen elk come down to the edge of the property in early winter, and this wasn't that. Animals move in a way you recognize even when you can't see them clearly, a logic to how they shift their weight, how they turn. This thing didn't move that way. It rearranged itself. That's the best I can do. The air was cold enough that I could see my own breath clouding in front of me, and still my brain kept trying to call it a heat shimmer, kept rejecting what I was seeing and being forced back to it. It was at the tree line, and then it was a few feet in front of the tree line. Not because it had walked forward, because it had rearranged itself into a position a few feet forward. I don't know how long I stood there. Probably not long. And then it noticed me. I don't have another word for it. Noticed isn't even quite right. Nothing had changed visually. It was still at the tree line doing that displacement thing. And then something shifted in the quality of the air between us, or in me, or in both, and I understood with complete certainty that whatever was in that yard now knew I was at the door. I slammed the door. I don't remember deciding to do it. My hands did it. I slammed it and I hit the deadbolt, and I stood there with my back against it for a second before my legs went and I sat down on the kitchen floor. The linoleum was cold through my socks. The ceramic rooster was up there on the counter. The stove light was on. Everything in the kitchen was exactly the same as it had been 30 seconds ago, and I sat on the floor and I shook. 2:19, 10 minutes left. I sat there for all of them. At 2:30, I watched the microwave clock the whole time. I got up, got a glass of water from the tap, and went back downstairs. Tom hadn't moved, still face down, arm hanging off the edge, dead asleep. I put the controller down on the carpet and lay there on my half of the pullout and looked at the ceiling until it got light outside. I never told Tom. Not that night, not the next day, not ever. He woke up around 9 and asked if I wanted eggs, and I said sure. And we ate eggs and played the motorcycle game for another 2 hours. And his parents moved around the kitchen behind us, and Brittany came through once in her Shell Station shirt, poured coffee, didn't say anything to either of us. She didn't know she'd left the door open, or maybe she knew and figured it was fine. She'd only been a minute. I never asked her. I never told anyone. Aaron had a saying he used whenever the subject came up. I heard it maybe a dozen times over the years, always in the same voice, always with that particular squint like the sun was in his eyes, even when he was standing indoors. I've been out in that pasture at 3 in the morning my whole life, and nothing's happened yet. The yet was the thing that bothered me. Most people who didn't take it seriously left the yet out. They'd say nothing's happened, full stop, like the absence of past consequence was a guarantee of future safety. Aaron kept the yet in and didn't seem to hear what it was admitting. He ran cattle on the south end of town, maybe 40 acres, and he'd been doing it since before I was born. His family had been in Baker County since before halfway was halfway. He was the kind of man who treated every local custom he disagreed with as a personal insult, and the time had fallen into that category somewhere around his early 20s and never moved out. I don't know who made it a dare originally. By the time I was old enough to understand what Aaron was doing, it had been going on long enough that nobody tried to talk him out of it anymore. He'd just look at you with that squint and say his line about the pasture. I found out about it the same way I found out about most things in Halfway. His mail. He got a catalog from a livestock supply company in Pendleton, a couple of seed circulars, the occasional letter from his daughter in Bend. Regular pattern, regular life. Then, one October morning, I was 26, I think, though it might have been 27, the mail just kept coming for him and he wasn't there to get it anymore. Everett came to the post office that afternoon. He came in at 2:50, which I remember because Donna gave him the same look she gave everyone who cut it close, and Everett didn't even register it. He asked me to hold Aaron's mail. I asked for how long. "I'll let you know," he said. He didn't say what happened. He didn't say anything else. He put on a face that meant the conversation was over, and I let it be over because I already knew. We all did, more or less. Someone had found Aaron in the east pasture that morning. I heard it from 3 different people before noon, not because anyone was gossiping, just because it was a small town, and it was the kind of day where you mention things. The way you mention that the road is icy or that the creek is running high. Useful information. Aaron Green, East Pasture, October. Everett had the case closed inside a week. I know because his mail pattern told me he got a higher volume of department correspondence when something was ongoing, and it dropped back to normal fast enough that I noticed. I held Aaron's mail for 2 months before his daughter drove up from Bend and sorted things out. She was in her mid-30s, quiet, polite in the way of someone who was holding a lot together and not letting any of it show. She didn't ask me anything about her father, and I didn't offer anything. She signed the forwarding form, and that was that. Jerry Rojas I knew less well. He'd grown up in one of the newer houses on the north side, newer meaning built in the 90s, and his family got the usual things: utility statements, a subscription to a gaming magazine that ran until the publication folded, school correspondence when he was younger. He was 19 when it happened. Spring, my 22nd year, which means I'd been behind that post office counter for 8 years by then and had seen a certain amount. Jerry had decided the whole thing was local superstition. I knew this because his friend Marcus had a loose mouth and liked to talk while he waited for his family's package notifications. And one afternoon in March he'd told me, like it was funny, that Jerry was planning to go out during the time just to prove a point. He said it the way you say something you think is daring and clever. I didn't say much back. I might have said something like, "Be careful," which would have sounded like exactly what Jerry thought it sounded like. Old women's talk, that's what Aaron would have called it, and probably Jerry used similar words. He went out in April. That's when he stopped coming home. Everett handled it the same way. Minimal. A few days of what looked like searching, a couple of official-looking envelopes in the Rojas mailbox, and then quiet. The family's mail kept coming. His mother got more personal correspondence for a while after. I recognized the handwriting of relatives writing in, the kind of letters people send when they don't know what else to do. Then that slowed too. Things do. I thought about Jerry sometimes when I was sorting. I don't know why him more than Aaron. Maybe because he was 19. Maybe because Marcus had been standing right there in the post office when he told me, grinning about it, and I hadn't done anything except not grin back. Reese Thornton was different, and the different part was what stayed with me. She'd rented a cabin on the western outskirts, one of 3 vacation properties that a management company out of La Grande listed online. Nice enough place. I'd been by it once or twice over the years for various reasons. The management company was not from halfway and did not know the rules and apparently had not thought to find out. That's my way of saying nobody warned her. Not the rental listing, not the agency, not whoever handled the key handoff, which I gathered was a lockbox situation with no human contact at all. I saw her once, maybe 5 days into her stay. She was at the post office picking up a package, manuscript pages someone had mailed back to her, based on the return address, a publisher in Portland. She was friendly, asked how long I'd been there, said she loved the light in the valley. She had the quality of someone who had come to a small town to be alone in a romantic way, not a desperate way. A deadline, she mentioned. A month to finish something. She was gone before the end of her 2nd week. I don't know exactly when. Her 2nd package arrived and sat in the back unclaimed, and after 5 days I flagged it. Everett came by the following morning, 8:45 before we were technically open, and he knocked on the glass until I let him in. He took the package and the details of when it arrived and didn't explain anything. He was in and out in under 10 minutes. The management company sent a cleaning crew about a week later. I know because they mailed a key to the lockbox address, care of the property, and I delivered it myself. Everett's correspondence volume spiked for a few days and then came back down. Same pattern, same pace. I'd seen it twice before, and now I'd seen it 3 times, and I understood that this was just how it went. The shape of the aftermath, the administrative outline of a loss that everyone in town already understood, and no one would say aloud to anyone outside it. The community moved on. That's what communities do when a thing confirms what they already knew. You grieve, and you move on, and you make sure your deadbolt is good, and you don't say too much to people from outside, because there's nothing useful to say. I kept working the post office. I kept sorting Aaron's seed catalogs and Jerry's gaming magazines until the subscriptions lapsed, and I kept watching the Thornton Cabin's forwarding address sitting empty in the system. And every night, between 2:17 and 2:29, I stood at my bedroom window and watched the empty street below and told myself it was habit. The Baker City doctors had been good enough for a long time. Dr. Hess had been seeing my mother for 3 years by the time things changed, and he knew her case well enough that she'd stopped having to re-explain things at every visit. That mattered to her more than she said. She was not a person who liked repeating herself. But in March, around the time the mud starts thawing on Route 86, Hess referred her out. The Parkinson's was moving faster than he wanted to manage alone, and the specialist he trusted was in Boise. St. Luke's, he said. 4 hours. My mother called me on a Wednesday evening to tell me, and I stood in my kitchen with the phone against my ear and listened to her explain it in the same tone she used to describe weather. Matter of fact, not asking for anything. I said I'd come. She said, "You don't have to do all that." I said I knew that, and I came anyway. Packing took less time than it should have. Living the same way for 20 years means you don't accumulate much that requires decisions. I had flannel shirts and jeans and work boots and a box of things from the kitchen I didn't want to leave sitting. My mother's house was already sold. Had been for 8 months by then when she first moved to Baker City for the medical access. So there was no question of that. It was just my place on the west side of Maine, the one with the window that looked out over the street, the one I'd been standing at every night between 2:17 and 2:29 for longer than I could remember. I knocked on Kimberly's door the morning I was loading the truck. She came out in her fleece before I'd finished explaining, already nodding. "I'll keep an eye on things, don't you worry," she said. "Your mother's going to be all right. I'll check in Tuesday if that works." I told her Tuesdays were fine. I gave her a key and the number for the building in Boise, which I'd written on an index card. She took it, folded it once, and put it in her pocket without looking at it. "You just drive safe, Joel," she said. I did not correct the name. Kimberly had called me Joel for 10 years, and I had stopped wondering why. The drive was 4 hours on a clear day, and it was a clear day. Route 86 out to Baker City first, then I-84 west through the valley, then south on 84 into Idaho. The Blue Mountains opened up and then flattened out, and then Boise appeared in the distance the way cities do when you've been driving through high desert. Sudden, bright, larger than you expect every single time, even when you know it's coming. I had not left halfway in a significant way in a long time. There had been trips, Baker City, a few times over the years, the occasional errand that needed something they didn't stock in town. But this was the truck packed, the house locked, Kimberly holding the key, not coming back by dark. I kept the radio off most of the way. The apartment was on 8th Street, 3rd floor, in a building that had a buzzer panel by the front door with 30-something names on it, most of them faded to illegibility. The management company had emailed me photos, but photos don't give you the sound of a place, and the sound of this place was traffic. Continuous, not rhythmic. Not the way you can adapt to a sound that pulses, but the flat, ongoing presence of a city that didn't stop. Cars, mostly. The occasional bus. At night, it dropped in volume, but never went away. The doorman's name was Willie Duncan, tall, broad, dark jacket, composed in the way of someone who had watched a building's front door for years. He was at the desk when I came through with my first load of boxes, and he nodded once, professional and easy. "Evening," he said. "Need anything?" I said I was just moving in, third floor. I know, he said. Package came for you earlier, left it at the desk. He slid a padded envelope toward me. It was the forwarding I'd set up for the post office, my own employment paperwork, transferred to whatever counted as a home address now. I thanked him and took it upstairs. The apartment was small and smelled like someone else's cleaning products, and the window faced the street. 3 floors up is not high enough to be above city noise, but high enough to see the tops of the cars and the streetlight on the pavement below. I stood at the window for a while after I put the boxes down, just looking at a street that did not go quiet at night, at a city that had no reason to know what time it was. I visited my mother the day after I arrived. St. Luke's was 15 minutes by car, a big regional medical center with a parking structure and a lobby that smelled like every hospital lobby. She was in a room on the 4th floor, small framed in the bed, white hair against the pillow, and when I came in, she said, "You drive safe?" in a tone that implied she already knew the answer and was asking as a formality. I said I had. "I'm not going anywhere, Joel." She caught herself. "Alfred?" A small pause. "Go on and sit down." I sat. We talked for an hour about nothing in particular, the specialist, who she seemed to cautiously approve of, and the food, which she did not. She asked about Kimberly. I told her Kimberly was checking in Tuesdays. "Good," she said. "Kimberly's good." When I left, she said, "You've got your reasons for all of this." I wasn't sure what she meant exactly, and I didn't ask. That first week, I slept the way I hadn't slept in years. The bed was a rental mattress, the room was too warm, the traffic was constant. But I went down fast and stayed down and woke at 6 or 7 feeling like I'd actually been somewhere restful for a change. Not standing at a window, not watching a clock, not waiting for 2:29. I lay in the dark the 3rd or 4th morning and tried to figure out what was different. The traffic. The buzzer panel with the faded names. Willie at the desk in his dark jacket, smooth and professional and untroubled by anything. Or maybe just the distance. 4 hours of high desert between me and the thing that came out of the Wallowa-Whitman at 2:17 every night. I told myself it was probably just the mattress. The 8th night I woke at 2:14 and didn't know why. No sound I could identify. No bad dream I could hold on to. Just the ceiling of a room that still didn't feel like mine. And the particular quality of being awake that means you've been awake for a few seconds already without knowing it. Like the decision to surface happened somewhere below the part of you that makes decisions. I lay still for a minute. The traffic was doing what Boise traffic does at 2 in the morning, which is not nothing. A car every 30 seconds or so, the occasional diesel that rattles the window glass a little, a siren somewhere north getting smaller. I had come to know the rhythm of it without trying to, the way you learn the sounds of any place you sleep in long enough. It was ordinary. It was 2:14 in the morning in a city of 240,000 people who had no reason to be vigilant about anything. I checked my phone. 2:14, and then 2:15 by the time the screen came on, and I registered it. I told myself, irrational. The thing was in halfway. 4 hours of high desert, 2 mountain ranges, I-84, and whatever geography means to something like that. I had been sleeping fine for a week. I put the phone face down on the floor and stared at the ceiling. 2:17. Not faded, not thinned out the way traffic does late at night when you hit a gap between lights. Stopped. One moment there was the ordinary sound of a city at 2:17 in the morning, and the next moment there was nothing. And the nothing had a specific weight to it that I recognized before I understood I was recognizing it. My body knew it first. I was already moving, already off the mattress, already across the floor, already with my back pressed flat against the wall beside the window, before I had finished the thought that something was wrong. I've spent 34 years learning that silence in my body. The way it sits different from regular quiet. Regular quiet is just the absence of noise. This silence has an edge to it, presses back when you push against it with your attention. I learned it at 8 years old, listening to my mother throw the deadbolt. I learned it at 12 with my back against a kitchen door on the cold linoleum. By the time I was 20, I didn't need to hear a clock to know when it started. I was flat against the wall. The window was 2 feet to my left. The streetlight came through the gap in the curtain and put a line of orange across the floor. I made myself look. Moving to look means leaving the wall. I slid left until I could see out at an angle, the way you check a corner, and I looked across at the parking structure attached to the convention center on the other side of 8th Street. It was there, on the roof, 4 stories up, against the flat Boise sky that is never fully dark because of all the light the city throws up at itself. It was there the way it is in Halfway, the rearranging displacement, the thing that exists without crossing the space between positions, but larger, much larger. In Halfway, I had seen it at the tree line 40 feet from a back door or moving across the south field behind Aaron's property, and it had been large enough. What was on that roof was not the same scale. I don't know how else to say it. It was the same thing, and it was not the same size, and the city lights behind it and around it didn't make it easier to see. They made it worse. In Halfway, you see it against dark trees, dark sky, dark fields, and your eye can at least try to find its edges. Here the light came from every direction, and the thing existed at the wrong angle to all of it. The way a shape cut out of paper is wrong when you try to make it stand up. It only makes sense from one direction, and from every other direction it isn't quite real. I was 3 floors up and across 4 lanes of dead silent street, and I could feel it. That's the part I don't have a clean word for. It's not heat. It's not sound. The closest I've gotten is fever warmth pressing through a wall, the way you can feel that someone is sick before you touch them. That specific radiating wrongness. That's what came across the street and up 3 floors and through glass and curtain and whatever else was between me and it. Not toward me specifically. It wasn't attending to me the way it attended to me through the Rose's back door when I was 12. This was ambient, the thing existing, the hunger part of how it exists, the way a fire doesn't target the air it burns. I pressed my back against the wall. I did not close my eyes. I watched the roof of that parking structure and I watched the thing on it do what it does. Displace, rearrange, exist wrongly against the background of a lit city. And I thought about 240,000 people sleeping without their deadbolts thrown, without their window latches dropped, without any of the 34 years of body knowledge that had me flat against a wall at 2:17 in the morning instead of standing at a window or lying in bed or walking back from a bar or doing any of the 1,000 ordinary things people do in a city at 2:17 because they have no reason not to. I thought about that for 12 minutes. At 2:29, the traffic came back, not gradual, immediate, a car, then another, then the baseline hum of a city that had never stopped, as far as it knew. The roof was empty. The roof was empty, and I was still against the wall, and the traffic was back, and I understood something. Not the way you understand a fact someone tells you, the way you understand a thing your body has been holding for 34 years without your permission. And then one night, your body just opens its hand and shows it to you. Halfway was not a place the thing had found. Halfway was a place people had stayed on purpose. The Greens, the Murrays, the Roses, all the families I had sorted mail for since I was 14, all the return addresses I knew by shape before I read them. They had not simply learned to live with it. They had stayed because staying was the thing that kept it there. The latches, the deadbolts, the nightly 12 minutes of everybody inside and accounted for. That was not accommodation. That was a perimeter, and it held because of accumulated weight, the same way a dike holds, not because of any one sandbag, but because of all of them in the right place for long enough. I had left. I had pulled myself out of the line and driven 4 hours west and left the gap behind me, and the thing had followed the gap here. 240,000 people. I picked up my phone off the floor. It said 2:28. I called Kimberly. It rang 3 times, which felt long. She picks up fast for a woman who was almost certainly asleep. Joel. Not a question. She knew the hour. I'm coming back, I said. Tomorrow. I just wanted you to know. A pause. Not a confused pause. A Kimberly pause, where she is deciding whether to ask something and deciding not to. All right, she said. I'll keep an eye on things until you're here. Thank you. You drive safe. She hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand for a second, then put it down on the kitchen counter and started pulling shirts out of the closet. I did not sleep. There was no point trying. I folded everything back into the bag it had come out of and put the bag by the front door and stood in the middle of the apartment in the dark for a minute, doing a check the way you check a hotel room before you leave, making sure I was not leaving anything behind that I would need. There was almost nothing to check. I had been here 8 nights. I had not accumulated anything. The apartment smelled like someone else's cleaning products the night I arrived, and it still smelled like that, like I had not made any impression on it at all. I took the key off my key ring and set it on the counter. I thought about St. Luke's. I thought about the 4th floor, Nova in the bed with her white hair against the pillow, the way she had said, "You've got your reasons for all of this." I thought about sitting across from her in that room and trying to explain what I had seen on that roof, what I understood now, why I had to go back. I could hear how it would sound. I could see her face doing the thing it does, not disbelief exactly, but that patient, careful stillness that means she is trying to find a way to let you keep whatever you need to keep. And I knew that if I sat down in that chair across from her bed, I would not get up from it in time. So I did not go. I picked up the bag and I left the key on the counter and I went downstairs. Willie was not at the desk. There was a woman I had not seen before, younger, reading something on her phone with the desk lamp on low. She looked up when I came through the stairwell door with my bag and she said nothing, just watched me cross the lobby, which was the right call. I pushed through the front door and out onto 8th Street. The city was doing what it does before sunrise, which is not nothing and not much. A delivery truck 2 blocks north. The street light on the pavement below my window. Still orange, still doing its job. The parking structure across the street sat the way parking structures sit, concrete and quiet and 4 stories of nothing, which was all it had ever been. I stood on the sidewalk for a second with my bag, and I looked at that roof and then I loaded the truck. I took I-84 east in the dark. The city let go of itself gradually, the density of lights thinning out, the road widening, the high desert opening up on either side of the interstate. I kept the radio off. I had kept it off on the way here too, but for different reasons. On the way here, I had been trying to think. Coming back, I was done with that. The Blue Mountains came up slow. Route 86 east from Baker City in the early morning. The light just starting behind the Wallowas. The valley floor still in shadow. The smell of pine and cold dirt coming through the vents if you crack the window. I cracked the window. I had been away for 9 days and the smell was immediate. Your body keeps a copy of a place you grew up in. I pulled onto Main Street with the lights still low. My apartment was above the hardware store, west side of the street, exterior stairs up the back. I had the key on my ring because I had not left it anywhere. I went up the stairs with my bag, and I unlocked the door, and I went inside, and I threw the deadbolt. I stood in the dark of my own apartment, which smelled like me and like the wood of the building, and faintly like the flannel shirts I had left hanging in the closet when I packed. The window faced the street. The street was quiet the way halfway is quiet, which is almost total. A dog somewhere, the silence of a town of under 300 people mostly asleep. I checked my phone. It was 1:52 a.m. 25 minutes. I sat down on the floor with my back against the wall below the window. The same way I had sat on cold linoleum in the Rose's kitchen when I was 12, and I waited for 2:17. There is a Sunday in November I keep coming back to. Not because anything happened, because nothing did. I had left Boise at 3 in the afternoon, which gave me 4 hours of buffer. Nova was in the chair by the window when I arrived that morning, which was new. The nurses had started getting her up more. She looked smaller in the chair than in the bed. We talked for 2 hours. She asked about Kimberly. She asked whether I had been eating. She did not ask why I always left by 3, same as she had never asked why I was back in halfway after 9 days in Boise, same as she had never asked why I stood at my window every night between 2:17 and 2:29 instead of sleeping like a person. She just said, "You've got your reasons," and meant it as permission, which is a thing she has always known how to do, and which I have never once deserved. I kissed her on the top of the head, and I left. I took I-84 east, with the mountains going gray in the rear view, radio off. I was back in halfway by 7:15, deadbolt thrown by 7:20. The question I do not let myself finish is whether the thing came back with me. I know it was in Boise. I know it was on that roof. What I do not know, what I stopped letting myself work out, is whether it followed the perimeter home when I came back, or whether it stayed. Whether there is something in Boise now that those 240,000 people are sleeping through without knowing. I think about Jerry Rojas, who went out in April to prove a point and did not come home. I think about Reese Thornton, who loved the light in the valley and came to a small town to be alone and never finished her deadline. I think about what they did not know and how it did not help them, not knowing. Then I stopped thinking about it. Kimberly checks in on Nova on Tuesdays. She told me this in October when I first asked, and she has not mentioned it since, which is her way of saying it is handled and I should stop bringing it up. She leaves a message on my phone if anything is different. Nova's color, whether she ate, whether the nurses seem attentive. The messages are short. "She's doing all right, Joel. Call me if you need anything." I never call. I listen to the messages standing in my kitchen, and then I put the phone in my pocket and go back to whatever I was doing. The Tuesdays I know Kimberly has been there are easier. My parents stood at this window, not this apartment. They had a house on the east side, sold now, but the same window in the sense that matters. Same street, same dark, same 12 minutes. My father died when I was 6, and I do not have a lot of him, but I have that, standing at a window. The flat posture of someone waiting for something to pass. My mother did it alone for years after. I did not understand until I was 12, sitting on cold linoleum in Tom Rose's kitchen with my back against a door I had just deadbolted, that what they were doing was not watching. It was showing up. A choice you make every night without anyone telling you it matters because there is no one left to tell you. Aaron Green did not believe in the choice. Jerry Rojas thought the choice was superstition. Reese Thornton never got the chance to make it. I do not think I am braver than any of them. I think I grew up here and they did not. It is 1:58 in the morning now, November. The street below my window is empty the way it always is at this hour. No cars, no dogs, the hardware store dark below me, the porch light on across the street at the Murrays the way it has been for as long as I can remember. I have my flannel shirt on and my socks. The deadbolt is thrown. The window latch is dropped. I do not know if my being here is enough. I have turned it over more nights than I can count and have not come any closer to an answer. My parents did this together for 20 years, and then my father was gone, and my mother did it alone, and the perimeter held. Whether it held because of them specifically, or because of the families across town also throwing their deadbolts, or because of something I do not have a name for, I cannot tell you. I just know what Aaron Green knew and refused to act on, that the people who were outside when it came did not come back and the people who were inside did. So I stand here, 217. The street does nothing dramatic. It is just the street, the hardware store, the Murray's porch light, the empty pavement going pale under the one working street light. Cold coming through the window frame the way it always does in November, the old seal not quite tight. I put my hand flat against the glass and the cold comes through my palm. I watch the street the way my mother watched it, the way her mother probably watched it, though I do not know that for certain. The way people in this town have watched it since before it had the name it has now. 223. The street holds. 226. A dog somewhere on the north end, just one bark, then nothing. 229. The 12 minutes pass and the street is still the street and I am still here. I drop my hand from the glass and the cold stays in my palm for a few seconds before it fades. I do not know if it is enough. But it is the thing I have, and I do it. And I will do it again tomorrow night, and the night after. The same way Donna opens the post office at 9 and locks it at 3. The same way Kimberly checks in on Tuesdays. The same way Nova says, go on when she means goodbye. Some things you do because someone has to, and you are the one who knows how. I step back from the window. The street is quiet, the deadbolt is thrown. I go to bed.